Hello, everyone. How are you? Hello, and welcome to Bookselling University. This course is called How to Improve Your Book with Beta Readers. I'm Dan Janal, and I will guide you through this wonderful topic today. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Dan Janal, and as you can tell by the picture, I've written a lot of books. I've written 12 books that have been translated into 6 languages. Also a book coach and developmental editor. I ghostwrite books for a few select clients. And before that, I was a daily newspaper reporter, and I won a few awards doing that. And I was also a business newspaper editor. I also was on the PR team for America Online, IBM, and Reader's Digest, and many, many other companies, some of which you've heard of and some of which you haven't. I'm also the founder of PR Leads, one of the most successful subscription publicity services on the internet. And I'm also a professional speaker who has spoken literally everywhere from Beijing to Budapest. And it's my pleasure to be with you today. Today, we're going to talk about how to write a book that everyone loves. And if you're like me, every time you've written a book, you send it to your publisher and you're wondering, is it good? Is it good enough? Did I leave things out? Did I put too much stuff in? Is there someone out there who knows more about this than I do? Am I a fraud? Are they going to find me out? Well, that's what happens to a lot of authors. And that's because authors work in a vacuum. By nature, we're more solitary and introverted than most, although many of us do have good interviewing skills and we can get up the extroversion when we need it. But generally speaking, we work in a vacuum and we follow our intuition and our research. That means that we don't get a lot of real-world feedback. We write what we think we know, we write what we believe to be true, but sometimes those books just don't ring true. And readers say, that's not me. Things really don't happen that way because the authors only know what they know, that they don't know what they don't know. And they could unfortunately leave things out. And they leave out important things. And they're mystified when they get bad reviews on Amazon. They say they didn't write about this, they didn't write about that, they spent too much time on this, they didn't spend enough time on that. And that's just a shame. You might use a word and it's just the wrong word for that audience. There are a lot of things that can go wrong when you're writing a book, especially when you're writing in a vacuum. Well, I want to help you make sure that your book rings true. And in order to do that, you need to get feedback. And frankly, you need to get feedback early on. And that's way before you encounter the expensive part of publishing, like copy editing and proofreading and layout. Because believe me, you do not want to pay copy editors 2 or 3 times to go over your book because you're rewriting massive sections because one of your reviewers told you something too late. Better to learn early in the game what the problem is. Now, fortunately, there is a process to help you write the book of your dreams. And that process or tactic is called a beta reader. So what is a beta reader? We're going to go into that in this course. Let me give you the agenda here, and then we'll address all the questions on this slide. We'll talk about what is a beta reader, what do they do, what don't they do, how you benefit from having a beta reader, how you find them, and how do you coach them or instruct them, and how do you work with their comments. And we'll also go through some real-life examples from me and my most recent book, so you'll see exactly how it plays out in a real-world situation. Now, I first became aware of the term beta readers many years ago. I actually attended a seminar, an in-person seminar with Mark Victor Hansen, the co-creator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, which has sold about 25 billion copies of their books. And I think if all the people on this call and all the people who listen to this course over the next 10 years, we put all of our books together, I don't know that we will sell as many books as Mark Victor Hansen has sold. So he is someone to listen to and respect. And you might wonder, the Chicken Soup was a great series. They sold a lot of books. They had wonderful, inspiring stories in each book, maybe 60 to 100 stories in each book. And you'll probably say to yourself, I wonder how they selected those stories. Did they just have 100 stories and they just lucked out and maxed out and figured, okay, we put out a call, we got 100 stories, we're great, we're going to run with these stories, and we hope it sells. No, that is not how they did it. They actually put out a call to people to say, submit your stories. And they knew a lot of speakers and consultants and coaches and writers and authors and all sorts of people who submitted work and their short stories. And many of them were good. But, you know, Mark and Jack said, we don't know what we don't know. Let the audience decide. So they gathered groups of readers, and they sent these stories off to the readers. And the readers rated those stories. And the ones that scored high got into the book. And the ones that didn't score high didn't make it into the book. And they did that with all of their books. And obviously, success leaves clues. There is something to be said for that. We need to follow their example and use beta readers to tell us what's good and what's not good. So this is a good time to define what is a beta reader and what do they do. Beta readers can be your best friends. I don't mean literally your best friends. You don't want your best friend to read your book. Your best friend may be a great guy to go bowling with or have drinks with or play golf with or whatever. But if they're not in your subject field, then you don't want to show them your book because they're not going to be able to give you good feedback. You want someone who can read your book with a sense of authority. And we'll get into that in a few more slides, but I want to give you a top view first. Essentially, what a reader does is they read the manuscript. They could read a chapter or they could read the entire book. You decide. They tell you what they like, what they don't like, and more importantly, they can also tell you what is missing because they are experts in their field and you may be almost an expert in your field, or they see it from a different point of view, and they can tell you what is missing. They can also give you feedback on your tone and your style and the flow and the readability. Is this written at the right level? Is it too dense? Is it too informal? Is it informal enough? You know, there are all those questions that you need to decide, and you need to ask them to look for it with that point of view. And we'll go over other things that they can look at in more depth in this course as well. But just as important as to know what they do, it's important to know what they don't do. These are not people who will copy edit your manuscript or proofread your manuscript or make fine word choices or interior design your book in any way. Those are all other specialties that you will have other people on your team do. That's not what a beta reader does. Now, if a beta reader points out a typo, that's fine, but that's not why you're asking them to read the book. If they say, hey, you're using this word, but in our industry, we really use that word, that's valuable information. So that kind of word choice is good. But we're not talking about the copy editor level where they say, you know, you really need to use this, that instead of who or whatever. You know, that's a different level. Okay, I don't want to be pedantic about it. Let's move on. So what do you look for in a beta reader? You're looking for an authority who knows your subject matter. They'll be able to give you a great view of what you need to know and if you're covering it well. You could also find someone who's going to be a typical reader. You know, that may not be the authority. You know, you may want an authority to help you figure out how to write a dummies book, for example, but your typical reader would be, you know, a dummy. And I don't say that with any negative sense at all. Those books have sold almost as many as the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. These are not dumb people, but that's your typical reader. They're reading it at a different level than an expert would. Now, what else do you want? You want to make sure that they are responsible and reliable because you are working on a deadline. You need to make sure that they are responsible people who are just not saying, oh, yeah, I'll do it, but they never do. So we want people who are responsible and reliable. We also want people who are good communicators. And by that, I mean, they can't just say, no, I don't like it. They have to give a reason. They have to be able to communicate their thoughts to you. They should be able to say things like, this story doesn't make sense. This thought doesn't really match up with real-world expectations. This story doesn't prove your point. In that way, you say, oh, okay, great. And also, they should be positive people who can express themselves in a positive way. There are people who can say anything, and it sounds so sugar-coated. You're grateful for the information, and there are other people who are negative and critical, and frankly, they will drain you. I don't care if they're the world's leading authority on the subject. If they are going to give you negative criticism in a nasty way, or a way that you just take as just being defeated, you're not going to finish your book. You're going to go and all go down a miserable hole. So if someone is sort of nasty or passive aggressive, or someone who you just think is not going to be a good person for you, then don't ask them to be on your team. Now, I'm not saying they have to be a cheerleader. It's nice to have cheerleaders, but we want people who can point things out to you. But again, we're looking to cut out the vampires, as it were. And also, they have to be available in the time frame. This is just a practical matter. If your book is due in X number of months and you need feedback on this chapter by a certain date, and if they're going to be on vacation, or they have a big project, or they're teaching a university class and they have absolutely no time during that time period, then you move on and you find someone else who does. Now, you might be wondering, gee, that's asking a lot of people. After all, you're not paying a beta reader. They're doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. So you're probably wondering, why do beta readers want to do this? And the truth is that there are many benefits to being a beta reader. And the earlier you understand this, the better, because you'll be able to share that with these authorities as well when they say, why would I want to be a beta reader? And you can just read the slide to them. First of all, they get access to the material now, so it can help them faster. When I wrote my book on how to write a book, I did a workshop seminar, and I'll talk more about that later, but there are a lot of people who wanted to read my book a year before it came out, simply because they wanted instant access to that information. So by getting access to that information now, it helps them sooner. Second, they feel they have input into the book. So if they're in your field, in your discipline, they can say, oh, I helped with that book. I read that book. I gave the author suggestions. So they get a little pat on the back. They get some bragging rights there. So that's really cool for them. They make a difference. Everyone wants to make a difference in the world, and this is one way that people can help make a difference, by giving you feedback. Also, people like to feel helpful, so you're giving them a chance to help you, and that makes them feel good. It also gives them a chance to show their knowledge. Let's face it, there are a lot of people who are know-it-alls, myself included, and we just love the chance to tell people what we know and to brag about it and to show our knowledge. So this gives them a chance to let them spread their wings and say, yeah, this is really great, and this can be made even better if you do this, that, and the other thing. Finally, they have access to you. Do you have any idea how valuable that is to them? You may think you're working in your room, sitting in front of your computer, but you have incredible resources and influence and access, and a lot of people want to tap into that access. They want to be in your brand. They want to be in your tribe. They want the sunshine of your brand to shine down on them. So if they do you a favor, they become part of your inner circle. And frankly, you owe them a favor now. So some people may want to do it. So say, I'll read his book. Maybe he'll be on my podcast, and that'll all work out great. So there's a win-win for everyone, and isn't that the way the world should work? There is a psychological trigger that can make people want to help you. And that is, quite frankly, there are a lot of people in the world who just want to help. They're very giving by nature. They live by a sense of gratitude that makes them happy. They feel fulfilled. It gives them a sense of purpose. All you have to do is ask them. So you need to ask them as a friend. You don't put out a notice like a job board looking for beta readers, must have this kind of capability, whatever. That's kind of, I don't want to say insulting, but it's just cold and not warm and personal, because people want to feel like they're doing a favor in the most positive sense of the word and helping you. So ask them as if they're a friend or a potential friend or someone to bring into your inner circle. So where do you find these people? Well, all over. You'd be surprised at where beta readers are. For example, on your mastermind groups, there are people who know you quite well through these weekly or monthly groups that you've been working with for months or years who would love to be a reader for you. Also, your e-zine readers. Now, again, not every one of your hundreds or thousands of e-zine readers is qualified or has the time to do this, but if you put a notice in your e-zine and say, hey, I have a new book coming out and it's about this topic, and if you would like to give me valuable feedback on it, I'd love to share it with you. So that's one way you could do it. Also talk to your advisors, your coaches, and your consultants. They know you well. If you're doing a workshop on this topic, ask for people who, again, who are a bit with it and on the ball, who would want to participate and become even closer to you by giving you feedback. So just use it as a line. I did that in my workshop, and I had about 10 people. It blew me away who wanted to read my book and give me feedback, and they did, and I'll share that with you later. You can also join groups on LinkedIn and Facebook and put the word out there. Also, you might see people posting in those groups and say, hey, this person really knows their stuff. I'm going to reach out to them individually and private message them and see if they'd be interested in helping me out. You can also go to local meetups on your topic and see if there are people there who can help. You might want to query some professors or authors on this topic. Go to Amazon and see who's written books on this topic. You may very well find that people who've written books similar to yours or in your field actually would want to help you because they know that you can help them. And there are people in the world who think that a rising tide lifts all boats. There are other people who think that the world is a zero-sum game, and if you sell a book, then that's a person who's not going to buy my book. Well, if you want to work with the first group of people, because people buy lots and lots of books in the same genre. No one buys one diet book or one self-help book. They buy lots of books. Books are like bananas. People buy them in bunches. That's my philosophy. So that's a way to find, those are many ways to find beta readers. Also, I just came across this morning, and I finished reading a Kindle book, and at the very end of the book it said, would you like to be a test reader? See, she called them test readers, not beta readers, which frankly I thought was brilliant because the industry uses the term beta readers, but in reality they really are test readers. And she pointed out many of the things I pointed out to you in just 4 bullet points. You'll get access to my information faster, you'll be helping me, and isn't that wonderful? And if you wanted to do that, you would just send her an email and she would check you out and see if it made sense for both of you. So that's another way. Plus, if people are reading your books, you know that they're pre-qualified because they've read your book and they'll probably read your next book. So that's great. So how do you approach a beta reader? Simply, you can ask them. You can use whatever format makes sense and that you are comfortable with. You can email them. You can chat with them. You can be in groups. The important thing that I've always found is to say please and thank you. That is really, really missing in today's online world. You rarely see people with common courtesy manners that I grew up with, and they seem to be disappearing. But when you say please and say thank you, you stand out from lots of other people who are just gimme, 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 gimme. So here's a sample script that you can use. And frankly, you can modify this in any way. I don't think this is the best formula in the world. It worked for me. You have your own voice. Make your own voice shine. So here's my sample script. Hi, I'm thrilled that you've been a fan of mine for years. I'd like to reward you for your loyalty. I've written a new book and I'd love to know what you think about it before I send it off to the publisher or the printer. I truly value your opinion, and I'd be honored if you would read the book or a chapter and give me your honest feedback. Please let me know if you're interested, and I'll send you the book or a chapter. Thanks in advance, Dan. And if people respond back, that's great. And if people don't respond back, that's great too. And wonderful. So what's next? Well, they say sure. You can respond with a very, very simple system that I learned by trial and error with my book. First of all, you need to give them the details now. You need to coach them through the process because chances are they've never been a beta reader before and they don't know what's expected of them. So you need to direct them every step of the way. First of all, you need to tell them what you want them to do. Second, you want to find out if they want to receive your entire book or just a chapter. Reading an entire book is a big, big commitment. And some people will say, hey, I can read a chapter on a certain topic, but I really don't have time to do the whole book. Does that help? And you say, that's great. You want to give them any other instructions that you think are useful. And we'll go over this in more detail on the next slide. You want to praise them and thank them for their service, and you can never give them enough praise and enough thanks. So every step of the way, because frankly, they may say they want to do it, but they could drop out tomorrow because of any number of reasons, and you want them to feel that you are really depending on them, and you want to give them no reason to not work with you. So you want to be as courteous as possible. So let's dive a little deeper now. What do you want them to do? It's all about the content. So you want to ask them questions like, are my examples clear or are they vague? Are they easily understood? Are there enough examples in stories or too many? Are they in the proper order? Is the flow of the book good? Is the writing tone good? Am I talking down to readers? Am I addressing them at the right level? What levels of information are you giving? Is it a basic level? Is it a thought leadership level? I mean, if you're writing a book for, say, frontline personnel in hotels, that's going to be a lot different than writing a book for strategic planning for hiring professionals in hotel management. So think about what kind of tone and style you want to do. Also, you want to let them know that they are not responsible for grammar or punctuation or proofreading. In fact, they may ask you those questions, and some of these questions as well, before they agree to do it. They very well may say, what do you want me to do? And you can just read them this slide and the previous slide so they have a good understanding of exactly what's in it. The next slide shows a very important tip that frankly is worth the price of the seminar alone, and that is, how do you deliver the manuscript? Do you send the full book or a chapter? Do you mail a hard copy or do you email a PDF? This one really perplexed me. I thought that everyone would want a hard copy, so I printed out copies of my book. It was a lot of pages and a lot of money, and you know something? A lot of pages actually cost a lot of money when you send it by mail. And if you send someone 250 pages by mail and you want their comments, you have to give them a self-addressed returned envelope with postage so they could put the manuscript with their comments back in it. This cost me a small fortune. If I had to do it over again, I would probably urge them to read a PDF, and surprise, surprise, I didn't realize this until later in the game, you can actually write on a PDF. I didn't know that. So you might not have either. Now you do. So people can actually read on the computer screen and type their comments back to you, and that would be great. Now, I developed a number of personal insights when I sent out copies of my book, which is called Write Your Book in a Flash. And the results that I had are different than what you will have, but I think there's a lot of instruction here and things that I learned along the way that will be helpful for you when you look for your beta readers as well. First of all, everyone wanted the entire book. No one wanted just a chapter. That proved to me that people were really interested in this topic, which was great. And they were really to devote the time to read an entire book. So I was very, very pleasantly surprised, and you may be surprised as well. I still think it is a valuable exercise to ask people for their choice as to whether they want to read the entire book or a chapter, because I think it's the right thing to do. That way they're in charge and they're making the commitment. They're telling you they're making the commitment to one or the other. And if they're in charge of the commitment, then I think there's a better chance they're actually going to follow through on it. Because frankly, not everyone will follow through. Life happens. Everyone comes in with the best of intentions, and some number of people will not follow through. In my case, everyone did return the book, and they returned it promptly. And most of them gave very good comments. Only one person really muffed it, in my point of view. He just wrote, "This is wonderful." And, that's it. I just spent like $60 or $70 copying this book, mailing this book, putting postage on another envelope to write it back, and he wrote one line, this is good, I liked it. I mean, man, you didn't even bother reading it. And I didn't know him well, so that was my fault for not looking at him more thoroughly. But 1 out of 10 isn't bad, so I think those are pretty good results. Now, the other thing I found out was that some people offered more detail than others. One person was a former university professor, and she had comments on almost every single page, and they were very, very good comments. They made the book a lot better. She pointed out numerous things that I'll talk about on the next slide, but just in general, she was very detail-oriented. I had other people who were not detail-oriented, and they just pointed out a good story, or they were good in the margin, or I like this, or nice phrase, or I like this chapter, or whatever, and that was good. And people pointed out different things. It was funny. No one pointed out the same thing twice, which is pretty odd when you're dealing with 9 or 10 people on a 150-page book. You'd think there'd be a lot of overlap. Oh, I love this story, or I hated this, or so. There's no general consensus of anything that like to take this out. This stinks, which is what I thought would happen. So it was all over the board. Everyone came with a different point of view, and they all pointed out different things, which is valuable. And everyone gave feedback, and that feedback led to reviews, which was a nice unintended benefit. Now, here's some specific feedback that I got from my beta readers. First, they said there's so much self-promotion. And let's face it, I wrote the book as a big business card in a lot of ways. I wanted this book to get people to know, like, and trust me, so they would hire me to be their book coach or their developmental editor, or maybe even their ghostwriter. So I was peppering the book, and I guess I peppered it too hard with, here's what I do and here's how I can help you. So they said there was too much self-promotion, and I scaled it back. And frankly, I'm glad they did. My feelings were not hurt, nor should yours be, because I'd rather have these 10 people pointed out than have people go to Amazon and leave 2-star reviews saying, this book is nothing but a big advertisement for the author. That would be horrible. And that was not my intention, because I really want to help people write their books. If they want me to help them as well, that's great. But I can't help all the people in the world. So, I mean, I can't help all the people in the world myself, individually, one-on-one. But I can certainly help lots of people as they read the book. So that's really the key there. So again, too much self-promotion, not good. Second, some stories seemed out of place or didn't prove the point. I thought they did, but they didn't. And they have the final say, because they're invariably right. If the story didn't gel with them, then they're not wrong. I'm wrong. So I either cut stories or trim stories. In fact, one person said, this story is boring. And she was right. It was way too long. It was a case study, and it was boring when I wrote it. So it was nice to have that confirmed. So I took that out. One of the key things that I found out was that I had instructions for an exercise, and they were out of order. You can look at a book so many times and read it so many times and still not see the mistakes, and someone else can read it and say, wait a second, this goes before that, or that goes after that, or this doesn't flow properly. So I'm grateful that they pointed that out, because that would have been very embarrassing to wind up in print. That's one of the great things about beta readers. I also asked them a question. I had chapter summaries, I had summaries at the end of each chapter. And I was wondering, is that pedantic? Is that too much? Is that boring? Is that the tell them what you tell them what you told them, tell them what, that whole thing? So I didn't know if it was just too much, but surprisingly, everyone said, yes, keep the chapter summaries. We like that. So I did. Someone else pointed out that my book's roadmap was on page 48, and it should be much sooner. By roadmap, I said, here's what the book will cover, and here's what's going to be in Chapter 2, and Chapter 3, and Chapter 4, and Chapter 5. I think that's an essential part for a book like mine, and I want to get that point across, but I had so much material in front of it that the beta reader said it really should be much sooner, and she was right. So I took Chapter 1, which was very long. 48 pages is way too long for a chapter. And I broke it into 3 chapters, and it read much better, and it made the book a lot stronger. So for me, the feedback from my beta readers was essential. It helped me create a much better book, and I hope it will help you create a better book as well. So here are a couple of do's and don'ts that you're going to want to use as you work with your beta readers. First of all, do recruit enough readers. How many is enough? I honestly don't know. That will depend on you. Each book is different. I had 10. That was a good number for me. It may be too many for you to manage, or you may have 20 chapters and you might want a different expert reading each of those 20 chapters. So it's going to be different for everyone. Next, send the early drafts. Oh, excuse me, don't send the early drafts because they're in constant flux. You want to take the chapters as far as you think you can take them. And you say, I can't make this any better. That's when you want to get the feedback. If you know things are rough and you're saying, oh, I'm going to add a story in here, I'm going to add an example here, I'm going to add some statistics here. No, that's not the version you send to your beta readers. You don't want them to have to guess on anything. You want them to see what you think the reader, the final reader, will see, and they will tell you if you've done your job correctly. Don't leave them hanging. Here's a tip that I wish I had followed, that I learned by trial and error, and that is don't send everyone the same version at the same time. What I mean by that is if you send 10 copies out at the same time, people are going to find the same mistake 10 times over. But if the first 3 people read the book and they point out 3 mistakes, then you can correct that and then send out an updated version to your next 3 beta readers, not the same ones, another set of 3 or 2 or 4 or whatever of readers, and then they may find other errors, or you may have written something and what you wrote wasn't any better than what you corrected. So this gives you a chance to get more feedback on other material. Give them a realistic deadline. I mean, you have your own deadlines, of course. You have to meet your own deadlines for your publishers and such like that. But you can't make it so hard for them that they don't have enough time to read this in a timely manner that fits into their lifestyle. So if you're late and delayed and whatever, you can't say, here it is, I need this back by tomorrow at noon. It's just not the polite thing to do. So think about that as you're working in your timeline on when your chapters are going to be ready for review, when to send them out, and all that good stuff. So do you take their comments seriously? Well, yeah, you do, but that doesn't mean that you have to do everything they say. Now, if they say the story is boring and you think it's great, well, maybe you're right and they're wrong. Maybe you want to get additional feedback and get some more information that way. But just because they say this is A, B, or C doesn't mean you have to do exactly what they say, but take it seriously and say, maybe they have a point there, let me sleep on it. I really love this paragraph, or I love this word, or I love this story. How can they not love it? But sleep on it, think about it, look at it with fresh eyes, and then make a decision, because they may be right, they may be wrong, but see what happens. Do tell them what you want them to do, and do tell them what you don't want them to do. That way you can manage their expectations and make good use of their time. Do thank them in every communication, and do print their name in the book's acknowledgments, and do send them a copy of the book as a big, big thank you. There are 2 mistakes you want to avoid. 1, you don't want to tell them that they can buy the book at a discount because they were a beta reader. No, you send them a book. And the second big mistake, you don't want to pay them. No, this should be a favor. This is not a job or an obligation. This is something that they want to do to help you You are not paying for their service. If they want to be paid, you can find other people who really, really do want to help you. There is an additional benefit to having beta readers. Your beta readers become your reviewers, your ambassadors, your tribe, and maybe even your launch team. They want to help you. They're invested. And some are going to offer more than others. Some may have large platforms that they want to share your book with. Others may not have any followers at all. That's okay. Everyone can write a review, and you might want to use their comments on the reviews. If you go to my Amazon book page for Write Your Book in a Flash, you'll see about 20 reviews of my book that I posted before the book was published. And that goes a long way toward creating social proof for future buyers of the book. And all of those people who gave me those reviews were either beta readers or attendees in my workshops and seminars. So it got the ball rolling. In fact, on the next slide, here's a handwritten note. Dan, what a great book. You'll help thousands of people release their voices onto the page. I hope my comments are useful. I've never been a beta reader. See you at some event down the road. Maggie Odell. P.S. So much of the text was a smooth, clean read that I didn't make many notes. So, what is the other benefit of having beta readers? Feedback like this, a note like this, a handwritten note like this will certainly make my day and will make your day as well. As you get good feedback, you know that you've written the book that everyone wants to read. You've written the book that strikes a chord with everyone. You don't have to worry about being an imposter or being seen as an imposter, because your peers will have read your book beforehand and give you valuable advice and information to make your book a success. I'd like to thank you for attending this course. I'm Dan Janal, the author of Write Your Book in a Flash. I'd like to give you a free chapter of my book as well. This chapter is on how to overcome the limiting beliefs that keep you from writing your book. Just go to my website, writeyourbookinaflash.com. There'll be a little sign-up box there. You can download it, and it'll be sent to your mailbox immediately. If I can help you as a book coach or as a developmental editor or as a ghostwriter, please let me know. There's more information about that on my website. So again, thank you for being here. This is Dan Janal signing off for Book Selling University. Thank you very much.